Hey everybody, welcome back to the Comic-Con Podcast, Season 2, Episode 32. Recording this on August the 18th, 2022. Of course, you got your powerhouse team, Justin, aka Nemesis Prime, leading the show, and my man Zack. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, everybody? Always glad to be back every week, talking some comics, possibly some drama. Not this week. I think we're tapped out on the drama this week, but we do have a good guest here this week that will always help spice up the episode.
Oh, absolutely. So if you have been listening to this month's episodes, we've been bringing on some of our neighbors to the north, some Canadian guests. Of course, last week we had on Black Crown Comics, and then we have another guest this week and also next week. And I feel like, Zach, I don't know if I can even be drinking during this episode because our guest is a little younger than our normal guests. So
I'm a little nervous as well. Do I need to watch my language a little bit?
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. But speaking of guests, we have our man Wesley from Wesley's Comic Collection. What's going on, Wesley? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to be here. And for your guys' worries, I mean, I'm technically 10 months away from 19, which up here in Canada is the legal drinking age. So I think you're all good.
Shit.
All right.
But as soon as I go down to the States for Terrificon, everything's messed up. So
yeah, I didn't think we saw you at the Comics Roadhouse at Terrificon drinking with ourselves and the Pressable Defects crew and the 3 Men in the Basement. I don't know what you and Joey were doing, maybe hanging out and checking out all those comics you bought.
Getting prepared for the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, us older guys, we still partied hard, and still some of us still made it to the show the next day, even though it was tough for me on that Saturday, and you all know about that.
Yeah, I definitely heard some stories.
So we met out there in Terrificon. Was that your first con experience in the US, or what have you where else have you gone?
That whole trip was my first time in the States too.
Oh wow.
So it was my first time in the States, first US con. I've been to a couple of the big ones up here in Canada, but nothing too that was definitely the biggest con I've been to.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So you go to I guess little shows, like 1-day shows they have in Canada. I guess they have
Yeah, there's a couple 1-day ones. There's a bigger one in Toronto actually next weekend, which I'm not able to make this year, but there's one in Niagara Falls that I went to in 2019. So there's a couple of bigger ones around, but definitely not as many as the States, it seems.
All right. So let the people know where they can find you, especially on social media and YouTube. Of course, you're a newer collector. So where can people find you? Yeah. So obviously, while they're listening to us, they can go ahead and follow you on all the social medias.
Yeah, well, I mean, on Instagram, I'm Wesley's Comic Collection. I know it's not really that creative of a name, but it's just the first thing I thought of when I made the account, and it's pretty straightforward. And then on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel called Future Specs, which I do with my good friend Joey Does Comics. So you can find us over there just doing comic book YouTube content. So
awesome.
That's pretty much it.
How did you and Joey link up? Because he's in the States, right?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because I've seen his name going around in the YouTube live show chats and everything. And then Spinetix had one of their shows. I think it was the first infamous show that they got deleted. They had the Pressable Defects on. And Jay DeButcha was like, hey, the young guys should get together and do a young collector show. And then somebody said that. And then Jay was like, why are you bringing Wesley into this? He's a grown man. Because at that time, my profile picture was me and Kevin Conroy. So he thought I was Kevin Conroy, the older man in the picture. So that I had to be like, no, I'm also a teenager. So that's kind of how we got started. Got talking through Instagram. Was just like, hey, want to start a show? And kind of rolled on from there.
Yeah, you definitely guys are the youngest YouTubers that I know about. There could be other ones, but I would say the most prominent, especially on Instagram. I know Joey for a while. I've seen him at some shows here on the East Coast and Terrificon as well. And then you coming down here, that was really awesome. And you guys finally got to link up. And that's similar to how Zach and I, I'm in Jersey, Zach's in Texas. We finally got to link up after, a good couple of years last year. He came out to Jersey. I got to get out to Texas. But, comic collecting. So you're just like you said, you're just shy of 19. When did you start collecting? How did you start collecting?
Well, so collecting, I've only been hardcore collecting comics for probably about 2.5 years. Kind of the start of the pandemic, like a lot of people, is when I got into it. But my whole family is a bunch of nerds. Like my uncle has a huge collection from when he was a kid in the 70s and 80s. My dad's a huge Batman fan, so I've always grown up around it. So I feel like it was inevitable. It just took the right timing of me getting my own job and my own spending money, then timing it with having the time to do the research and starting to learn all this stuff. So it was kind of an inevitable thing that started just a couple of years ago.
So what did you start with? Like, I mean, when you said you got started during the pandemic, what was it that initially drew you? Are you a writer, story guy? Are you an art kind of guy? Was it some kind of, I mean, for me, to be honest, I kind of got started, cards were the first thing I noticed, and then I got more into comic books. But like, what really kicked it off for you?
Well, it actually kind of started a year earlier because Infinity War and Endgame were coming out, and I heard that they were based off of Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War. So I wanted to read those stories before the movies came out. So I got those 2 trade paperbacks and read them, and then it kind of stopped there. And then, like I said, I got my own job and some disposable money. So I went to a Comic-Con and just kind of looked around. I didn't really get anything. And then everything locked down, so I just did more research, and I wanted to read more Thanos stuff because I loved him in Infinity Gauntlet, in the movies, obviously. So I just started reading some of the old Jim Starlin stuff, his work on Warlock too, and it just hooked me. So Marvel Cosmic is definitely my area that I stick to. Love all the Jim Starlin stuff. He's my favorite writer and artist, so that's kind of where I go for.
Yeah, for cool. Being just under 19 years old, you got some pretty nice keys in the background. I know this is not a visual show, but I mean, damn, you got like first him back there. You got the Warlock keys, some Iron Man, that Iron Man 55 back there. That's wild. When I was your age, obviously at your age, I wasn't collecting comics anymore because I was into girls and comics weren't cool back when we were 19 years old or 18 years old. So, but even then, like, I think my biggest key was probably like The Dark Knight Returns, like that series. Like that was probably the most expensive series I think I had, and maybe like, I don't know, like a Spider-Man 1, like the Platinum Edition maybe, but like you have like big keys behind you, which is wild.
Well, I mean, I wanted to knock out those Warlock keys for my collection before obviously Guardians 3 comes out, and I got a couple of them before we were even confirmed that we had an actor for Adam Warlock, so it was kind of nice to grab those before that. Although they still seem to be fairly cool. So,
how about more of the modern cosmic stuff? Like, were you big Annihilation fan? Like, are you just kind of like more of the 90s cosmic stuff?
Yeah, I'm trying to get into a lot of the modern stuff. I'm actually focusing right now on finishing my Annihilation run. I have a couple of the issues that I want to get. Still, that Conquest 6 I can't find anywhere, but that's kind of the one that I'm just going to leave for later. Secret Wars, the 2015 run, Infinity Wars, I've kind of been picking some of those up. Basically, how I kind of collect is if I see it and it has Thanos on the cover, I'm going to buy it. And if I know he's in the story, I'm going to buy it. Because that's kind of what I want to do with my collection. My 10-year endgame goal is to have every Thanos comic book appearance, and Adam Warlock too. Because those are my 2 tied for favorite characters. So that's kind of my endgame goal.
I got to tell you, that's a really good goal. And you saying that I actually did that with Jason Todd Red Hood. When they had, it was called comicbookdb.com here in the States. It's comicbookdatabase.com. You could actually go to this website and type in either like the writer, the artist, the character, or anything. And it would actually bring you and show you every comic book that whether it was the character, if it was a writer or artist they ever did, cover artist. So literally what I did was I just went down the line of everything Jason Todd was in, whether it was like one issue of Action Comics or Adventure Comics or like Aquaman. I didn't care. Even if he was like not even like a big part of the story, anything that he appeared in, I literally need to have every Jason Todd book. So that's really cool that's what you're trying to do, because I did that years ago for Jason Todd as a character, because he was one of my favorites. Obviously can't do it for Batman, but like Jason Todd, I was like, I think I can get every issue, and I still have them, which is wild. So that's really awesome. And I know behind you as well, looks like you're also a Transformers fan, just like myself. And I know recently you had our friend who we've had on here, Livio Ramondelli, on your YouTube channel. So big Transformers guy as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, my dad grew up in the 80s with watching the original show. So, of course, I grew up watching it with him as well. And so it's just one of my favorite cartoons of all time. I'm trying to get that original Transformers run because I want to read all that stuff. So I just love it. I actually, at Terrificon, got to have Bob Budiansky sign the Transformers 1, which was super cool to meet him and have him do that. And I actually got to meet the two voice actors who are there, Michael Bell and Dan Gilvezan, who are the voice of Bumblebee and Prowl. So that was super cool. I had them sign my DVD of Transformers the movie from '86. So that was super awesome. Just one of my favorite franchises.
You a Kill Lock fan? You've been reading Kill Lock at all?
Oh, yeah. I haven't picked up the last issue yet because I haven't been able to make it to the shop. But yeah, I've definitely been enjoying both series.
Nice. Yeah, Livio's great, man.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, and Livio's art and writing in the series was amazing. Yeah. And I know, like I said, you just had him on last week.
He was super cool to talk to.
Yeah, if you get a chance, everybody who's listening, check out the Future Specs YouTube channel. Check out the latest interview that they did with Livio Ramondelli. I'm sure we're going to have him on here again to talk the post Kill Lock Artisans race, because we had him on previously, right before it launched. We talked about the original series. And it's interesting, the voice actors and stuff that you said from Terrificon. I remember years ago at New York Comic Con, I met Mike Bell, and I had him actually sign my commemorative Insecticons
nice
figures. And they actually had an exclusive comic book that was exclusive to his table. It was like some random Transformers book. And it was all of the characters that he voiced, and it was a cover swipe of X-Men 1. So it was it was really cool. Yeah, I'll have to I'll show you a picture of it one day. If you ever, I can't think of what Transformers issue it is, but it's pretty cool. It's X-Men 1 homage with all the characters that he voiced.
Wow.
So of course, here on the Comic-Con podcast, for our newer listeners, we always take community questions, whether it's directly from our Instagram at the Comic-Con podcast. You could either DM us, either myself, Nemesis Prime, Milton the Manimal, or of course, you could always email us articles, voicemails, whatever, to the Comic-Con podcast at gmail.com. This week, we got ourselves a message from our friend Kent Comics. He goes, "What's up, fellas? What are some of your favorite under-the-radar characters from comics? The D-list characters no one knows about. I have always loved the Scourge of the Underworld from Marvel and the Upside Down Man from Tinian's run on Justice League Dark. Great characters that I feel like get no love. Anyway, thanks for the good listening times each Friday, and keep up the good work, you dorks."
Nice.
Well, Kent, we are dorks. We are nerds. Zach, you want to take first crack at it? What are some of your D-list characters?
So mine, it was kind of tough to think about it. You get put on the spot, and it's like, oh God, I can't think of anyone. But like, if I had to, my go-to is always going to be like X-Men characters and mutants. But the tricky part with that right now is tricky/awesome is finally with, all the resurrections of all the mutants, they're all kind of showing back up. So some of like the low level mutants are back in play and getting a little bit more action than they used to. But I've always been a big fan, and this is probably not low like D level, but the X Factor team, especially during the Peter David time, I love every character on that team. I really love Multiple Man, Jamie Madrox. Obviously, he's taken a bit of the forefront like the past decade or so, but he hasn't been around too much lately. I love some of the villains that are now showing back up with some of the Mutant Liberation Front. It's hard to just narrow down like one character Marvel-wise, but I'd have to say a lot of these, not your mainstay mutants, but I guess if I was to say the number one who's now back in the forefront is Generation X's Sync. He died relatively early during the Generation X run, maybe midway through, and he's back as like a mainstay X-Men character, and he's awesome. The things they do with him as a character are amazing right now, and really, really enjoying reading him. So that's kind of Marvel. For DC, it's tough. I don't have the history of DC that you do. I think for me, he's probably also not a low-level character, and I've talked about it before, but I love Deadman. I don't know what it is about Deadman. You put him on paper and he doesn't really seem that interesting. Like he's just this ghost who like inhabits bodies and shit. So he can't necessarily do a lot, but I feel like every title I read with Deadman, I love, from even like his solo mini series that he's had to the Justice League Dark stuff that they did back in New 52. as well as even recent. And then I know, Justin, you're reading DC versus Vampires, and he's showing back up in that. So I think Deadman would probably be my DC guy.
Okay. All right. For myself, I'm kind of sticking just to Marvel because there's so many characters in DC that, it was really tough to choose. And since you're kind of doing the DC stuff, definitely one of my two favorite 90s characters, definitely on the D list, I'd say, is Sleepwalker. Grew up in the 90s, loved the Sleepwalker series, just was like a cool character. And I feel like he needs to come out of somewhere, right? Like the last time I guess we saw him was like in the Fantastic Four. He briefly had a time in like Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur. Like,
there was a mini with him recently too.
Yeah, it's like they try to resurrect like these 90 characters, and of course another 90s characters who's, I guess he's he was D level because he was all over in the 90s, is of course Darkhawk, because you have to go when you go with Sleepwalker, you go with Darkhawk. Obviously he's had a newer. He got really powered up during the Annihilation, the King of, what was it? The King of Kings, right?
War of Kings
storyline. And then of course they have the new Darkhawk, which is no longer Chris Powell, but I think Darkhawk is such a cool character. As far as villains, it's tough because growing up I always liked Spider-Man, and Spider-Man had a ton of crappy villains, like super crappy villains. And of course now
Kangaroo Man.
Oh God,
Kangaroo Man.
I think every villain had it would be something man, like that would be their name. And the one that always stuck with me, really, because of the animated series, was the Spot. And it's, obviously he's going to be brought to the forefront because of the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse movies. Like, so, and he was a terrible character, but he's so cool. Like in the animated series, just like seeing all like the spots going everywhere and being able to kind of like, just jump in and out. So he's kind of like Mirror Master on like the DC side, but yeah, he was definitely a D-list character who they're trying to bring to the forefront. So
yeah, he was in Carnage recently also.
Yeah, they just brought him
series,
and obviously there's some stuff that goes on in that Carnage series, which is wild. So Wesley, what about you? What do you think are some D-list characters, whether Marvel, DC, that they could bring up in comics?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I mentioned I'm a big Jim Starlin fan, so it's obviously a big character, but one you don't see talked about a lot is Dreadstar, who is an awesome original character created by Jim Starlin, just another awesome cosmic Odyssey saga storyline that, kind of his run ended, and he hasn't really been in anything recently. I guess, well, Jim Starlin put out a new omnibus recently, but up until that point, there was like 20 years where he wasn't in a story. So just another awesome character that I love. And then DC, I don't really get into DC because, I like to stick to my Marvel stuff for budget-wise. But Marvel, I guess, just kind of like you mentioned, some of those random X-Men that you don't really see too often. It's cool that they're being brought back into the series, like you mentioned, because I guess they can do that. I haven't been reading it. So with the Resurrection stuff, that's kind of cool that they can go back, and these writers that, might not have these characters that they could have worked with before are able to go back and do that. So I think that would be something that would be cool if other writers could do that too.
Yeah, and I think that's what Hickman's done so well, right? Zack is like brought these characters that were nobodies and kind of upgrade. And I feel like we talk about this, like the upgrading of powers, completely changing them, gives them a better view, especially in the times that we live in and the world. Like now they seem cooler, because back in the 90s we're like, ugh, like that power is kind of corny. And
he took like, and it's kind of veering off topic here a little bit, but like you have in comics, and we've talked about this a lot with Punisher multiple times, about how you have these characters that are great characters, amazing characters, but times change and characters stagnate. And like with the X-Men, it's always been like, oh, we work at this school and then we go out and we fight people and humans hate us and blah, 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 over and over again. And don't get me wrong, I love it. And you keep making that shit and I'll keep reading it. But Hickman came out and was like, you know what? Fuck that. Break the status quo. Here we go. Resurrection. You got your own island. You're immortal. You can do whatever you want. It's a whole new nation. Bet. And then he dips from X-Men in the Marvel universe. Like he's just like, mic drop, see you later, and just changes everything. And sometimes that's what you need with like, the characters and everything. And stuff like that that takes these D-level characters, and not just Marvel, or I mean, not just X-Men characters, but these D-level characters, and brings them back because you reinvigorate them. Like Sleepwalker, to me, it's great to hear you say Sleepwalker, because I never got into Sleepwalker. In fact, I don't think I ever read any Sleepwalker. So to actually, and I know there's people like you out there that love Sleepwalker and thought like, oh, it was so cool during the 90s. I missed that boat. Like I was not on that journey at all. Not to say I disliked him. I just was not interested. So yeah, sometimes you got to shake it up and you get these characters, we were talking about the cosmic stuff. That's Annihilation did that for the stagnated cosmic Marvel universe after the glory days of the 90s, reinvigorated the Marvel. And as you were talking about
the Guardians.
Exactly. One character as well that I think I was thinking about it when you were talking about Dreadstar, and of course he pops up here and there, but dude, Quasar never gets like any love anymore. And like Darkhawk, dude, you nailed it with Darkhawk, Justin. Awesome. Another awesome character.
I could tell you I probably read that series like at least like 2 to 3 times. And then like he was always thrown into like Spider-Man comics, and like he was like Venom and the whole Midnight Suns, and so many different, like he would just show up in different series because he was a popular character, but then he just like disappeared for years. But then once like that Realm of Kings came out like crazy, and then he came back in that Avengers Arena, right? He was in like
awesome.
that what is it called with Arcade, like that Murder World thing,
Avengers Arena.
Yeah And like really haven't seen him too much, so that's why they really need to bring him to the forefront. Like with we've talked about this, like MCU needs to go cosmic. He's a character who can play in that cosmic world, other than like a Nova, like someone who's, of course, Nova's like an A-list character who needs to be there, but you want to bring up a D-list character. He's the type of character who you can really build around.
Do you remember I'm trying to find it right now. Oh, The Loners. Do you remember that mini series with Darker's basically like Trauma Anonymous type shit? It was like PTSD, and it had all these characters. It was like sad. Like they were all sitting in, like the basement. They're all like spin-off characters. Shit was
I think it was like the whole New Warriors power.
A lot of them.
Maybe. Yeah, it was like a weird group. And like
Ricochet, Darkhawk, Julie Power. Yeah,
all those D-list characters.
Right. Yeah, Phil Urick, the Green Goblin.
There it is. Power Pack's a team that is D-list that could come up.
Well, weren't they supposed to be getting an animated show soon or something? I heard rumors about that.
There's always been talk about that. And to be honest, that's not a bad look for like a younger generation, to kind of like for younger kids, animation to get into the Marvel universe. So they're probably already in the Marvel universe, but like something more animated for sure. That's a good question though.
Yeah, sometimes I love our community questions, because they really bring out some amazing questions for us to really dig deep into our thoughts. So if anybody has some D-list characters that they want to throw down, of course, throw it in the comments. Send us a message, of course, when we post our episode on Instagram. Throw it in the comments what characters. It would be really awesome to see what everybody comes up with. So moving on, let's go ahead and check out some of the articles that we have today. Our first article, kind of light this week, I'd say, especially in the Marvel world, DC world. Not too much going on in comic books or TV, but we're still going to talk about some stuff announced this week over at comicbook.com. You got the new Batman and Joker series by Marc Straczynski over on the Black Label. It's called Batman, the Joker, the Deadly Duo, coming out in November. So Marc Straczynski leads a DC Black Label that he's going to be writing and illustrating. Fans are going to get his first shot at it in November. Of course, the Clown Prince of Crime and the Dark Knight are teaming up in this title. It's actually the first time that we've seen Marc do interiors in almost 30 years, because the only other thing that he's done for DC was the Batman Black and White back in 1996. Marc goes on to tell it says, Batman and the Joker are two of the world's most iconic characters and have been at each other's throat for more than nearly 80 years. I've always thought it would be pretty entertaining to see having them on the same side as I write about them. Needless, nothing to say, stuff happens. And from what DC is describing it, it's saying the conflict between Batman and Joker has been one of the most storied of storylines of literature of all time. Always adversaries, they rarely have to work together, but this November, the iconic storytelling is going to bring the Dark Knight and the Clown Prince of Crime in a 7-issue Black Label series starting in November. Zach, what do you think about this?
I think it's awesome. I'll be honest. I took a bit of a break from the Black Label stuff. Not to say that it was bad by any means, but and this isn't going to help my statement here, but I feel like all the Black Label, we've talked about this, are always Batman. So you kind of got to, you just can't do every single one, obviously. But this is a really cool take. And I 100% agree, and I'm a Marvel guy, but you want to talk about the two most iconic comic book characters of all time, in my opinion. I don't think you can even argue it that it's Batman and the Joker. And I'm not even talking about as together. I think if you said greatest hero, of course, some people say Superman, but Batman, and then best villain, Joker, 100%. I just don't think there's an argument there. So I think it'll be really cool. I hope it's legit. You know what I mean? You never know how they're like, oh, they're going to be on the same team. And then I don't know. I hope they actually work together. It'd be really interesting to see them actually working as a team, because there is always that dichotomy on aren't they kind of the same person? The only thing that divides them is the killing thing. The Joker's kind of the Batman. The Batman's kind of the Joker type thing. I think you can really see the line blur if they're working together. And I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Wes, what's your take on the new Black Label series?
I mean, I think it sounds like a great idea because, like it mentions in the article, they've been fighting each other for so long. So it'll be cool to see them working together, and especially with a great artist too. I love a lot of his stuff, and I haven't really read much of his Image stuff, but it'll be cool to see his writing style with this too. So I like when the artists kind of get a chance to write a story for these characters that they've only drawn for so long.
Right. For me, I'm actually gonna take the opposite side. I'm like Zack said in the beginning, I'm kind of tired of the DC Black Label just being like Batman. Literally, it's either filtered with Batman, Joker, or Harley. We really need to step aside and just get away from the Trinity, get away from the big names. They did that quick Swamp thing. They did Constantine a little bit, but they really need other characters. The Question, they need other characters. The DC is littered with 80 years of characters, and they keep going back to the big three and then the next popular characters. They really could do so much more with so many more characters, and I just feel like they're constantly doing Batman, and I can't pick up every series that comes out. I do, because I like that it's not really in continuity. You can read it and it's just kind of there. It doesn't have to be, you didn't really need to know anything else of what's going on in the world, but man, they just constantly go to Batman, and I'm like,
it's the moneymaker, man.
Of course. Yeah, you slap Batman on a book and it sells, so they're going to keep doing it.
It's literally the one DC family that the titles never end. I mean, they sell the most. I mean, God, a Superman family barely holds its own. You look at DC, pretty much has gone to miniseries outside of Batman, really.
Yeah. A lot of them, even random, we had that Aquaman, Green Lantern mini. You couldn't get a Green Lantern ongoing. Aquaman's kind of not there. It's literally the Trinity. And then the Bat family is the only ones that have really continued through Rebirth. And of course, we've talked about it here on the podcast over the past few months, upcoming series, Robin is getting his own ongoing series. Of course, it's a Bat family character because that's the only thing that really sells, because it's Gotham and there's always something going wrong in Gotham.
It's so fucked up there, dude.
Yeah.
Rent's
cheap.
It's got to be cheap, man. But you know what? It probably isn't. It's probably through the roof. So people are you can't leave here because, it's crazy.
Yeah. So speaking of other comic book news, if we're not talking about DC, we're talking about some Marvel stuff. So this was over at Marvel.com. A new era of Fantastic Four begins with Ryan North and Iban Carlo. So of course, Fantastic Four recently ended. Of course, Dan Slott was the writer on that. But this November, Fantastic Four is going to be rebooted. And this first issue is actually going to be seeing a variant cover by Frank Miller, who hasn't done Marvel in a very long time. Of course, you have some Alex Ross covers in there, but what do we have to look forward to for Fantastic Four? Of course, the launch of Fantastic Four, or at least has landed the team, or at least two of them, in the world of trouble. Something has gone terribly wrong in New York, sending the Thing and his wife Alicia traveling across America to escape. But when they stop in a small town for the night and wake up in the morning, before they arrive, they find themselves caught in a time loop that's been going on since before they were born. That's been going on since before they were born. Yes, I had to read that twice. And for the third time, that's been going on since the before they were born. That's how the article says it. So, of course, Dan Slott did, Fantastic Four for quite a long time. Of course, with the most recent arc of the Reckoning War just ended. It didn't just save the universe; it saved the multiverse. Of course, what he was talking about regarding in Entertainment Weekly. But Marvel's first family. Again, here's a title that really is tough to hold its own, and we're getting another #1 reboot. Zach, I know you're not too big on the Fantastic Four stuff, but do you think maybe this series could be something different because Dan Slott's writing is not always the greatest?
So I've read the majority of the Dan Slott stuff. I haven't. I picked up Fantastic Four when it started with this run, and I'm not fully caught up with the Reckoning War. I'm probably about like 4 issues back at this point. And I don't know, man. Yes, you could say what you want about Dan Slott. He dips and he goes high and he goes low on his writing. I mean, obviously, Superior Spider-Man, amazing, and that's Dan Slott. And he did some good Spider-Man stuff, but he has some low points. Honestly, I think it's hard to write the Fantastic Four. I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This is a group of characters that have stagnated. There's nothing new with them. The only thing that was new in this recent run with Dan Slott was that Marvel had axed their asses for like 2 or 3 years. They've been gone since 2015. You hadn't seen them since Secret Wars. At least you hadn't seen Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman. Thing and Human Torch were around, but they didn't have a title. Since 2015, they didn't have a title till Dan Slott came out. So I don't know what you do, man. I mean, what's interesting about them? Oh, the Future Foundation. They got these little kids running around doing nothing. Like, I don't know, man. It's tough.
Wesley, what do you think? How do you recreate in 2022? How do you recreate the Fantastic Four and just make them worthy of reading nowadays?
Well, that's the thing with all these legacy characters. Like even the Avengers, you see them doing these weirder team combinations with getting these newer characters in there because they've been around for so long. So many stories have been written. It's hard to come up with new stuff. So, I mean, I guess it'll be cool to see where this goes. You mentioned a time loop thing. So it kind of sounds like a Groundhog Day sort of situation getting mixed in there. But, again, it's these legacy characters. It's kind of hard to write new stuff for them.
I got it. I got the Fantastic Four idea right here. Okay. Well, first off, by the way, time loop. Come on, shit. Isn't that the same shit they always do? Like, I mean,
yeah,
they're always in time loops. Like, isn't it? They're always going back in time. They're like the Flash of the Marvel universe. Like, stop messing with time. But here's what you do: you break up the 4. Okay, you send them to. I'm just gonna say like the 4 corners of the earth, whatever, and they create their own team led by each member of the 4. So like 4 Fantastic Fours. With one of the lead members of Fantastic Four leading the 4. New characters, new teams in leadership roles and changing it up. You got to get these 4 assholes away from each other because together they are boring and like stuck in their own like rote. And, they just do the same shit all the time. I don't know.
I think you should copyright that before Marvel gets it.
You better reach out to
they're probably
Ryan North and be
they're
like,
probably
hey,
dying for Fantastic Four ideas. They're like, please, someone send us something.
Well, it's crazy because Fantastic Four realistically hasn't been like good, except for like that Ultimate, right? Ultimate Fantastic Four was great.
Yeah.
And then obviously
Gabe's gonna hear this and be pissed, bro. You realize that?
Well, I mean, like I know other than like the 60s Stan Lee stuff, but like the more modern era, like growing up in the 80s, 90s, like 2000s throughout, like Ultimate Fantastic Four was so good. And then obviously with Reed becoming, the maker in that universe, like becoming a villain, like that's the only thing that's ever really been cool about the Fantastic Four.
I remember some eras with like, do you remember when Wolverine jacked up the Thing's face and he had to wear the helmet? Like that was cool.
Yep.
That was a nice change.
Yep.
Even the storyline where when Johnny sacrificed himself to Annihilus and he died, that was pretty cool. Even though he was like the last, I think he might be the last. He was like the last one who hadn't died at that point. So he was pretty obvious. It was like, oh, one of these guys is going to die. Well, it's kind of weird. Johnny Storm's the only one who hasn't died yet. So probably be that guy. But that was cool. It's just, I don't know, dude. I don't know what you do with these characters. You got to do something, but because anytime, even when you bring in like the solution to stagnation, right, is like you talk about the X-Men. It's so easy because you got them fuck ton of mutants. You can bring them in and switch up the team.
Yep.
The Fantastic Four, you're limited to 4, and you always got them. And then you bring in these other characters, and they're always on the outside. You know what I mean? You can never crack it. Like, you actually talk about what was something cool when they did the all new Fantastic Four, when you had Hulk, Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Spider-Man for a little while. And even some of those eras where one of the members left and you had like She-Hulk join the team. You had Lila, the Skrull, join the team. Like, that shit was good. That was good. Changed it up. But
yeah. And Marvel's First Family is something that's still always tough to do, whether again on screen. We've known it from the movies. I'm sure people are still skeptical of what's going to happen in the MCU with them, how you're going to bring them, because they've been around for so long and they never can hold the title. So the fact that we are getting a reboot, I don't know. I think I liked your idea with a new team, like several teams being the Fantastic Four is a good idea. So
like Batman Incorporated, but Fantastic Four Incorporated.
Yeah,
something.
That's all you got to do. Simple stuff.
Or like how there's 80 different X-Men teams, but for the Fantastic Four.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. What do you got? Blue, red, gold, silver. Exactly. That's all you got to do. The Fantastic Four. It's a good idea. I like that, Zach. Maybe you should definitely pitch that to.
I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna reach out tomorrow. I got him on my speed dial.
So, getting away from the comic book news, let's get on to some TV movie. We don't have too much of articles, but of course we want to definitely talk about some reviews. So I have not finished. I actually haven't. I'm not even gonna lie. I haven't even started Sandman, but Sandman will definitely be on our review soon. But this week we're going to talk about Paper Girls season 1. I know Zach recently finished it, and I have finished it as well. I was really looking forward to this, of course, on Amazon Prime. For myself, of course, 8 episodes flew by. A big fan, of course, Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Kang, of course, the writer and artist of the series. I was totally loving this from the get-go. Of course, you got the 4 girls, 1988. You got Erin, you got Tiffany, KJ, and Mac. All of them. So it's like right out of the comic book, watching these characters. A lot of things that happen in the show is straight out of the comic books. A lot of the things that they even say are directly from the comic books. I love the series for itself. There wasn't one character to me that stood out more than the others. They each kind of had like an episode or 2 of their own. Of course, time displacement is always fun because they go to the future, they go to the past. And especially, I think with this series, they definitely changed up some things. Not too much of being a spoiler, but the one thing that I really loved about this series was Mac's brother. It's something that from reading the series, is talked about, but you never see her brother. So when they do, of course, initially go to the future and you see her brother, and there's a lot of things that happen. That's something that doesn't happen in the comics, but it's really good to see that, especially for Mac as a character. Like, you get to see her change a little bit because of her current situations of her as like a 12-year-old girl. So thoroughly enjoyed that character arc, I would guess. I would say, and I love Tiffany, and Tiffany's grown-up version is another character who you see as well. And then just all the other things that you see in this, like the guy who plays the grandfather, Jason Mantzoukas, I think is right. Mantzoukas awesome. Or whatever. Yeah, he literally looks like straight out of the comic books. He's such a funny character. Yeah,
he looks like that. Like, did they write it for him? Because that guy looks just like that guy.
He always plays the crazy guy in every show he's in.
Yeah, he's like, in the comics, he looks a little bit more of like a grandpa. Like, he's a little older, but he's got like that long weird hair and the beard, but he's totally like that. The only thing, and I guess again, this is only 8 episodes, so obviously with the season 2, you may see a little bit more. Wasn't a lot of sci-fi. In the comics, there's a lot of sci-fi things going on, like creatures and other stuff. Obviously, in this, the only thing you got is the dinosaur, which not really too much of a spoiler, but so for me, I love this series, to be honest. I think this was definitely something that I was looking forward to this summer, and I'm glad I binged it in about a week. So, Zach, I know you just finished it. What did you think about Paper Girls? And I know you haven't read the series, so for you, it's a little different.
So yeah, I was pretty excited and we talked about it. I was pretty excited to get into it since I didn't know much about it. I thought the first episode was a little slow. But then it definitely got its legs underneath it, and I really enjoyed it long term. Wow, I couldn't disagree with you more though in terms of I couldn't stand Tiffany. She's my least favorite character. I thought she was completely unlikable. Like the whole show, I was like, God, cringe, dude. Like just everything about her was unlikable. If I would have been one of the other paper girls, I'd probably punched her in the face. Like she was just her adult self was awesome, but kid self, oh God. In fact, I actually thought that the bad guy girl that was chasing them, I thought you were gonna find out maybe that was her.
Yeah,
like in the future until we met her like future self. But
yeah, I thought that too. But that the change at the end, obviously. So
yeah. So I really liked it. I thought it was very interesting. I'm trying to, besides what I just said, I'm trying to stay moderately spoiler free. I really liked Mac, right? Mac's the one with the brother. I liked her story. I liked kind of how it plays out. It's a little heartbreaking. But I'm with you on the brother thing.
But that's true. That's in the comics too. Like
really?
Her storyline. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Other than her brother, her storyline in what happens in the comics, like knowing that's true.
Yeah. I kind of thought that, and I mean, it is what it is, the formats and stuff. You got to do what you got to do. But the first episode, the only scene you see of her brother, like when she's, in her present, he seems like an asshole. And then like you get to where she's like looking for him. And I was like, wait a second. Like I kind of, as a viewer, I thought that guy's probably a piece of shit. Like you wouldn't like this dude. And then she really does. I loved that interaction with her and her brother though, was amazing. It was a lot of fun. I liked the grandfather. That he was really great. But the thing is, like, not knowing the comic and stuff, I very much still feel moderately at a loss as to like what the hell's going on. But it's cool.
Yeah, it's very wild. The comic, obviously comic to live action, and we're only in one season. So even like the show, if it gets picked up, it can't go more than, I would say, 3 seasons, maybe 4 at the most, because it's only a 30-issue series. But even in the beginnings of the comic, it's very heavily dealt with creatures and like a lot of sci-fi stuff.
How far did the story move this first season in the comics?
It's weird because, like I said, there's so much that wasn't even shown in this season that doesn't it doesn't match up too much with the timeline of the actual series. So maybe 10 issues at the most.
Okay.
At the most.
It's like a third of it.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying it can't really go more than 3 or 4 seasons, but you don't really know, because obviously, to stay spoiler free, at the end of the first season, that really doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I really don't want to get too much farther into that. I want everybody to go check it out if you have Amazon Prime.
And Wes, did you watch it at all?
I did. I haven't. I've heard that the original series is great, so I'll probably try to read that before I watch the show, because I like to read the source material before watching the adaptation shows and movies. So it's on the list, but I'll get to it at some point.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those series where I feel like anybody could watch it. I even expressed to my wife, because I was like, it's a comic book, but it's not superheroes, so it's like, give it a shot. Like everybody can check it out, because it doesn't have to involve, like, everything doesn't have to involve superheroes nowadays. Like obviously, something that Zach's going to touch on next, we're going to talk about Lock and Key. There's always these different series that I feel like people are missing out on. And, Brian K. Vaughan doing Saga and Ex Machina and Why the Last Man, like this is his second adaptation for
third.
Third, yeah.
Runaway. He did Runaways. Well, it's not indie.
Oh,
but
right.
yeah, it's good that he's finally having like some success, because Why the Last Man was not a success. And Runaways died out right after 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think 2 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 3 at the most.
Something like that.
That's a series I want to go back and watch. But yeah, like I think this show definitely deserves a second and third season to finish it off, is my guess. But all the girls are great. I think they all play their parts very well. The actresses that they're playing them, and even their older selves are great to see. And my favorite, obviously, the giant mech that shows up, because that's something that you do get to see in the comics. So that was really cool. But yeah, so like I just said, Zach's going to touch on, I'm not caught up on this. I know Wesley's not caught up on this, but Lock and Key, man, this is the final season, right?
Yeah. So, season 3, final season, they cut it down to 8 episodes, where I think the previous seasons were like 10 and 10, maybe 10 and 9, something like that. I love Lock and Key. And if anyone out there hasn't read Lock and Key, I suggest doing it, like grabbing the omnibus. I'm looking at it right now, and it's so good. So good. But they did it right, man. They ended it, honestly, right where they needed to end it, because this last season, I was getting frustrated watching it, because it's just like, how long do these stupid ass kids who have access to these keys and they know all the powers, and then like they just get wrecked anytime someone comes at them? They're like, "Oh, we have all the keys." And it's like, but they just, like, they can't use them properly, and someone always comes and takes them all away from them. It's like, oh, well, that sucks. Now we have no keys again. It's like, God damn it, man! 3 seasons in, you still haven't learned these goddamn keys. But it's a lot of fun. I love the finding a new key and like going on the adventure of like what the power is and what it can do, is really, really cool. This season definitely rounded out the whole story, brought back every character pretty much who had any kind of importance in the show, made an appearance again in this season to round it out. The ending was very well done, very touching, really good. Like I said, it needed to end, but I like it. The show's great, but if you even moderately enjoy the show, you've got to read the book. The book is so good.
Oh. Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm literally at season 1. It's something that I started and I finished season 1, and then I'm just like, oh, okay. And then season 2 comes out and season 3 comes out, and I'm so far behind. But
Yeah,
I liked it. It was definitely something, and I've never read the series. I heard great things about it, but it's something on my watch list that I need to finish up. And with all these shows right now, like I said earlier, haven't started Sandman, but I really want to get through Sandman so we could talk about it here on the podcast as well.
I haven't started it either.
All right, so we're going to end our show as we always end the podcast with what are we currently reading. So for our new people who are listening to us, whether you're here on any of our podcast platforms or even on YouTube, we always talk about some upcoming books that we've read this week or some old stuff. This week, for myself, honorable mention, always got to talk about it, man. Silver Coin this week was ridiculous, right? I know you read it. Yeah. It was so weird and creepy. Yeah, if you creepy. People are not reading Silver Coin, I highly recommend it. This week's issue, I mean, they even give you a warning on that first page, right? Which has never happened in the other like 13 issues. It was
definitely the most disturbing one.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to get into it because it is very disturbing, but honorable mention definitely goes to that. But definitely pick of the week, and I know it's going to be terrible that I'm going to say this because I literally just kind of shit talk DC's Black Label, but the Batman One Bad Day, the Riddler this week, man, Tom King was a really awesome issue. I loved it's basically the whole issue is all about obviously the Riddler. He kills someone, and it's all about his mind game that he kind of plays with Jim Gordon and Batman. But the one thing I know, I'm going to get a little bit into it, but the one thing I really do like about this issue is that when he's talking to Jim Gordon very early on, he actually, it's almost like breaking canon or kind of expanding canon, because he talks about how he was the one who gave the Joker the information for where he lived in Barbara, like in The Killing Joke. Which is really amazing. That's not too much of a spoiler as far as like what happens in the book itself, but the fact that he brings that up, and then he also brings up the cop that he used to work with from like literally day one, or in not that one in Batman Year One, the girl, the woman Essen, Sergeant Essen, who he had like an affair with. Like Sarah
Essen, right?
Sarah, yeah. That's like crazy, like that. Especially if you're a Batman fan, you know what the Riddler's talking about. But if you don't, like the fact that they literally bring this stuff up, and you're like, wow, man, Tom King went deep, like in the Batman lore. But yeah, it's very interesting. And it's only a one shot. So, and I don't know if they're doing other One Bad Days.
Yeah, like they are for each villain, I think.
Okay, they are. Okay, yeah, because I was really confused of like why it would just be called One Bad Day and the Riddler won unless they were doing other ones. So yeah, that's definitely my pick of the week. Zach, did you get a chance to read this one?
No, I didn't, and I'm glad you said that because I was kind of on the fence because I'm like, another DC Black Label. But now I will, I will definitely try to pick it up, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Should I just continue to talk, and then we'll come back.
What about you, man? What did you got for what are we currently reading?
So I've got, let's see. So my might not be fair to call it hot garbage, but the book that I thought was kind of like the biggest joke of the week, in my opinion, was this Avengers 1 million BC. So if you're reading Avengers right now with Jason Aaron, there's Avengers Forever. And over this, for the past, I don't know, 15, 20 issues, whatever it's been, we've kind of had this prehistoric era Avengers show up. We've kind of been hinted at different version of the Avengers. And lately we've also been kind of told that Thor's mother is the Phoenix. That's been kind of like a big thing in the Avengers. And this, it explains it, I guess. It's so stupid, dude. It's so dumb. I was like, when you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it basically was just like, it's Marvel just pulling a fast one on you, I feel like, with this whole Thor Phoenix nonsense. But so that's kind of like my hot garbage pick of the week, I guess. And then my pick of the week, though, I know I'm going to say I didn't see this coming, but maybe other people did. But X-Men Unlimited Green #1. So they've been doing this like X-Men Unlimited stuff, and it seems to be like kind of one shots. I don't know if they're going to continue. I know there is some kind of crossover, I think, with digital media on these books, but this one kind of focuses on Nature Girl, who maybe most people don't know who she is. Justin's face, like, no idea. So
never heard the name.
Right. So she's a low level, like one of the younger new generation X-Men kind of, and her power is nature, right? So she interacts with nature. But this issue is kind of dark, and it's also like dark, but like justified. And she kind of goes on this whole battle on like how humans are destroying the world. And it's very, very much has like a environmental, aspect to it. And it's really, really interesting. The things that happen in are kind of crazy. It was different, dude. It was shocking enough that I really, really enjoyed it. So check that out. If you're an X-Men fan, you want to read something kind of a little different. X-Men Unlimited Green #1.
All right. Wesley, what about you? What are you currently reading?
Well, I actually haven't been reading New Comic Book Day books recently just because budget-wise, but I was on that Eternal series with Thanos for a while until it obviously ended. But now he's actually back in the Genus Vel Captain Marvel miniseries that they're doing. So I've been reading that. I really enjoyed the first issue. It's kind of like because Genus Vel is the son of the original Captain Marvel, who has kind of been dead for a while. So he's just miraculously resurrected along with his partner, Rick Jones. So they're trying to figure out why are they alive again and figure out what they're missing in their memory. So it's kind of cool. They're going through different planets that they've been to before, trying to piece the mystery together. And then, of course, Thanos shows up. So that's super cool. Just another awesome cosmic story that I recommend.
All right. Did you read that, Zach? I know you're really more of the Marvel than...
I haven't been reading the Genus Vel stuff. No, I did read the Eternals. We talked about that like a while ago and how awesome Kieran Gillen's run on the Eternals was. Surprisingly, like I don't know, Wesley, I don't know if you caught this episode, but I had to, prior when Eternals came out, I talked shit on that run and how it was garbage, and I couldn't, or not garbage, just how I was having a tough time getting into it. And then like leading up to this,
3 issues were definitely slower, and then it really picked up.
And there's a lot of exposition too. So like, not to say that I don't like books with a lot of exposition, but when you have an issue 1 and there's just a shit ton of exposition, you're like, okay, man, damn, like maybe wean us into this a little bit. But like, I gave it another shot, and I couldn't put the books down. I couldn't read them fast enough. They were so good.
Well, interesting stuff this week from all of us, I'd say, on the reading side. Of course, we want to thank the one half of the Future Specs team, the better half, our Canadian friend Wesley's Comic Collection. Wesley, thank you so much for being on here on the podcast this week. It's been an absolute pleasure. We got to meet you in person at Terrificon, your first true big con here in the States, and definitely went to a good one. Let everybody know where they can find you before we get out of here again.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you guys for inviting me on. I've been watching you guys on Lords for a long time, and then since you started up the podcast, I've been listening. So it's super awesome to be on here and talking with you guys. Again, you can just find me on Wesley's Comic Collection on Instagram and Feature Specs on YouTube. So that's it.
Awesome. Manimal, anything you got?
What do we got coming up? No, we got another Canadian guest next week to round out our month, right? Is that the end of the month next week? Damn,
yeah, it's
August
crazy.
over.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was going to be here next week, but I'm letting you know, Justin, I think I will be. So
All right.
should be good for next week. No, I got nothing. I know you got a few things coming up.
Yeah, I always got things coming up. Whatnot sales and who else knows what's going on. But yeah, myself, Whatnot sales this weekend. If you're listening to this early enough, Friday night, I got 2 shows. I got some early TMNT, some Mirage Ninja Turtle stuff, and then a Star Wars show after that. So make sure you're following me, Nemesis_Prime. And then whatever else, floats my boat this weekend. If I get a chance, I'll do another show. I think in New Jersey here, they're having the Woodbridge comic show on Sunday. So you may see me there early if you get out there. But if not, that's it for season 2, episode 32 here on the Comic-Con podcast. And we'll check you all next week. Peace out, everybody.
Later.
See ya.